Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Great Attraction Part 2. We'll take a few minutes. You can load in, drop into the chat, and tell us hello and where you're from so we can give you a proper hello. Once you get in, make sure to say hi in the chat so that we can say hi to you and know who we have on the call today. Hi, Trina. Trina. Hey, Michelle. Is it snowing in Vermont yet? Jesse, you're in Park City. You had a great Instagram post yesterday, Jesse. Arcadius, welcome to this side of the planet. Hi, Lana. Hi, Christy. So glad you guys are on. Okay, it is 10:01. We're going to hop in. Hello and welcome to our October iSpa Town Hall, and thank you for joining us. Last month's town hall topic was filled with valuable insights on attracting talent, and we barely scratched the surface of that topic. So today, we are continuing that conversation to highlight more of the exceptional hiring practices to attract and retain talent. If you have questions or comments for us, please use the Zoom chat feature, which I see you guys are doing right now. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, our panelists come from different locations and different businesses. Their insights and observations will likely be different from one another, but that variety of opinion is a real benefit of these conversations. Before we start today, we are thrilled to have Oakworks as our sponsor today. Their VP of Business Integrative Health and Wellness, Jessica Wadley, is here with us to share 3 capital expenditure tips with us as before we get started. Hey, Jessica.
Hello, Patrick. Hello, everyone. Good to see all of our friends here. I wanted to be very mindful and just not have a standard commercial and relevant to the topic today, which is really about the great attraction and employees. And then part 2, for you as a director, you are in full-blown CapEx planning season. And so I wanted to share three tips on planning for CapEx budgetary, maybe some tips to help you convince your general manager or your ownership if you're getting pushback on budget, and then how that really ties into hiring and attracting the greatest employees. So I promise it's not a commercial about the latest luxury features. That's super important. You know, you could always reach out to Brian, myself, and Angie. We can review those, but I really wanted to have an educational topic today, just 3 points in 4 minutes. And so have it tying into the panel. The greatest trend that we see right now, and this is sort of hush hush within our industry, is guests are actually filing claims, and you may or may not have experienced this yourself, with ADA compliance. And so when, rewind about a couple of years ago, as you all know, low height tables were the newest trend. That's now going to the next level, which is having true ADA compliance. And ADA compliance is actually 19 inches or below. Now, we are an FDA listed company. We manufacture an ISO certification. And so there's another layer to that, which is really having true ADA compliance. Companies will tout low height, but it's really about having anything that's below 19 inches. So we've actually been working for the last about 12 months secretly on releasing a whole suite of tables at all price points that are truly going to be ADA compliant. So, really ask yourself, have you had those claims? Has there been those type of things? And, you may not be able to replace your entire line of tables. Our advice certainly would at least be looking at planning and placing into 2023 at least 1 or 2 tables so that you could avoid that incident. A lot of directors are looking at sweeping all of their properties and just making it all so across the board if they're able to do so. But I would highly advise at least that you look at 1 or 2. So again, the critical inches there are 19 inches or below. we opted to come in at 18.9 at the lowest height level without compromising that comfort. So critical also, if you have any short or petite, I should say, therapists, they're going to be, you've heard it. I know you have, where they're like, my table's too high, my table's too high. So again, attracting that right therapist, it's the right thing for their health. It's the right thing for the guest. And it might be giving you some good tools with your general management also. Yesterday, I had a facial and the esthetician was 22 years old. She complained about her back the entire time, 22 years old. Again, great attraction. How do we track the right employees? So another just layer of risk management as you're planning for your capital expenditure. What accessories maybe can I add for my capital expenditure budget to make sure that I'm imposing proper ergonomics for my estheticians? You can see here, this is just a simple accessory that can be added to almost any manufacturer. You're gonna have to consult with us on that. That is proper ergonomics. The head is just elevated slightly above the table. You can see that's Jeff Riak, our owner. You can see his arms are actually proportioned correctly where they're laying. And you can see his knees are right underneath that table. And there was actually a full study where there was a lawsuit with a resort that shall remain nameless. And we actually developed this for that resort. And they have had zero incidences since for an esthetician who was complaining about her back pain. So easy accessories. If you don't have table budgets, again, please see us. Listen to your therapist. You know, that esthetician was saying out loud in her environment, my back hurts. The director was not acknowledging it. Again, relating to that attraction, but we're here to provide those solutions for you. So those were really the main two things, just for fun. And wrapping it up, I thought I would just talk about, again, those 3 tips. One is ADA compliance is the true new secret trend. Making sure that you have at least 1 or 2 tables available. We have solutions for you. If you can use that as a catalyst to push to get all new tables, great. If you can't, and then, you know, 1 or 2 tables is a great option. Being mindful of therapist injuries, that's another term and language that you can use. Again, see us for those accessories. We can help equip what you have. Same with guest comfort, so on and so forth. And then the third really is being mindful of how can I create revenue generation out of places that are not generating revenue. So I'm going to step aside over here for a moment, but there's so many new technologies now where we can generate revenue out of spaces, whether it be a relaxation area, whether it be working out into treatment and increasing your average ticket. There's some really cool things. And what we're doing right now is we're really working with each property, because this has been a huge trend, as we know. And I think it's important to be a purist and be high touch. It's also very important for us to be high touch with you, meaning let's consult on how we can create a unique experience for you that they cannot get elsewhere. And so there's just really cool things where we can brand that, we can be indigenous to your area. And so please see us on that as well. And the price points, not to always have it be about price point, but they're very accessible right now. We're in such an exciting time in wellness. There's so many new technologies, and we can really weave them in and create a unique experience for you. So thank you. Hopefully I have my 4 minutes, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I think the focus on ADA is really important. Also, not just the beds and the tables, but also your websites. You want to check and make sure those are ADA compliant as well. But Jessica, thank you so much for your time today. And just a little teaser here. At the end of today's session, Oakworks is giving away a Buoyance, not Beyonce, but a Buoyance face cradle, which is so awesome. So thank you so much, Jessica. We appreciate your time today. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Jessica. So let's get into this. I'm going to come to you first, Charlotte. I want to hear what you're experiencing right now in terms of talent, needs in your operation down there in Florida.
Yes, absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to Jessica and for iSpa for inviting me to join today. As Patrick said, I am here in Florida, in Miami at Fisher Island Club, just off of Miami Beach. And some good news and some trends that we're seeing currently in hiring and candidates coming through. We're definitely seeing more than we have seen in the last 12 months, so that's positive. We still find a lot of ghost interviews, unfortunately, but a lot less than we were seeing about 12 months ago. And, we're seeing a lot of students come back and start applying. And, in speaking to those students, they're all going back to school in person. So, their request for schedules is tied around in-person classes. So I think this is all a positive trend that we're seeing, that people want to get back into the world face to face. Not necessarily everybody is looking for jobs at home anymore. People are looking for that social engagement. And in fact, I've even had that come up a couple times in interviews, that, something that's important to them today in a job is to be part of a team and to have that collaboration. So that's music to my ears a little bit. And, not that it's all rosy, but it's looking a lot more optimistic than it did 12 months ago.
It definitely is. Marcy, what are you seeing where you're located?
Hello, I am at Red Mountain Resort in Ivins, Utah, or St. George, so down in the Red Rock country, beautiful desert. We, in just the last 4 to 6 weeks, are starting to experience the same thing. We're having many more applicants. I actually only have one open position right now. I went from, I think, 10 to 1. I'm so excited. So we are experiencing that same thing, and it's starting to kind of swing back a little bit, I think, from so much power being in the employee's hand and only being able to work when they want to work, as to where we can meet our business demands again. And we're filling in those shifts when we need it. So it's been a really exciting couple of weeks.
Well, that's good news. That's very good news for you
Yeah.
guys. Megan, I see you shaking your head. What are you experiencing?
First of all, thank you, iSpa. It's awesome to be here again. I love listening to the town halls. So if my head's down, it's because I'm taking a ton of notes while trying to participate. But I am with Gadabout Salon Spas and Verve Salons in Tucson, Arizona. And I wish I had the opportunity to say we only had one open position, but we do not. We have many more than that. For so long in our market, we had no massage schools actually open. And so recruiting massage therapists was so challenging. And we just had our very first massage school reopen. So I am super excited to be able to recruit and look at what it looks like to build a spa department again. But as far as trends, I see the same thing that Charlotte's seeing, that people are excited to come back to work. They want to be part of a team. The students, especially those part-time schedules. And if COVID taught us nothing, it was that flexibility was the key to a business relationship. So how we can be even more flexible than we've been in the last 3 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. Justin.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me. I am from the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess in Arizona. And we, are kind of seeing a little bit of the opposite. Right now, we're seeing a lack of candidates in our job pool compared to a few months ago when it was really overflowing. So what we kind of dug into and figured out is a lot of our candidates do come from Indeed, that search engine. And when we got digging into it, we noticed that a lot of our requisitions were going to the bottom. And kind of diving into the analytics of how Indeed works is they've kind of officially switched over to a search engine where they're putting anything that has like reciprocity, where it's like we have the same type of description, it's going to think it's spam and putting it at the bottom. So now we're kind of rebranding how we do our job descriptions and really creating separate things for each role in here with different lingo, because we want it to be at the top. So we're kind of transitioning into that right now. I'm kind of getting a feel how that all goes, because Indeed is a big place where we usually get ours. So we've been kind of working on that and doing job fairs, creating like special fun events where you can come in for open interviews. We've been doing like food and beverage aspect to it, almost like a happy hour, just to get the people in. And we're sending that to who we do have in our requisitions right now. So that seems to be working pretty well.
That's great. That's great. I think the more interactive you can make the interview process, the better. One thing we're
Right.
seeing here in the desert is we're getting lots of referrals. So a friend knows a friend knows a friend who's looking. So that's very, very good, because if they're a good therapist, hopefully, or a good receptionist, they will have just as good of friends coming through the door. And also, I think, Charlotte, I think we all kind of touched on this. People have been by themselves for 2 years or longer, and they're ready to be back with people again, which I think is a benefit for all of us. Good answers on that. I'm going to come to you on this next question, Megan, because in our last call, we talked about the interview process and how we were all conducting our interview processes. So I'll come to you first, Megan, on the interview process. You know, how are you handling that? Are you doing it through calls? Are you hiring on the spot? Are you doing background checks? All those types of issues that you were looking at, forgot about.
Yeah, so we actually stopped doing background checks because our education process is so long that we feel like when you're in our process that we're going to learn about you along the way, and we don't have cash in our buildings anymore, so a lot less theft opportunity. So we stopped doing background checks. The interview process is definitely not nearly as strict or stringent as it has been previously. We try and reply to every applicant in the same day, and that could be with a phone call, that could be with an email, and then have their interview within 48 hours. And if they're going to be hired, extend them the opportunity that we would like them to start the following week at the time of interview. So we're trying to be super fast, not have multiple layers of interviews. One of the things that we teach in our interview process is that we're hiring for friendly, we're hiring for kindness, we're hiring for how are you going to be a part of our team, that the skills we're going to teach you along the way. So we're not doing technical interviews.
In your shortened interview process, which I think we may all be saying that in just a minute, are you concerned that we may be missing some steps?
Possibly, but I feel like our education program has to be robust enough to catch that. And, you know, we have to be able to teach and coach and make decisions quickly, even once they're hired, right? Within 30 days, knowing if we made the right decision in hiring them. We only have a 50-50 shot anyway. So how we're doing along the way, that, I don't know, the education, the coaching, the leadership, the mentoring has to be as fast as the interview.
True. Charlotte, what are you saying on the interview process?
Yes, we've abbreviated ours as well. We do a pre-screening with HR, but it's done on the phone. So the candidate doesn't come in, you know, for that initial screening through HR. So the first time they come to property, they're going right to the department manager or director and interviewing. And, you know, if it's a go, then they are processed that day. We still do background checks. We still do drug tests as well, but we are expediting those. Sometimes that was taking 3 to 5 days. Now we get those back, you know, within 24 hours so that we can extend an offer much quicker as well.
Well, that's great. And it's so funny, in California where I am, we are not drug testing anymore. So it's interesting that some places are still doing that.
Yeah, I think it's the private club sector. I agree, because I hear from a lot of my colleagues in Florida that they're not doing it, but we happen to be one of those that is still.
Because I would imagine most people are testing for marijuana, which seems to be legal in a lot of states right now. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it'd be an old habit that may go away soon for some of us. Thank you, Charlotte. Justin, what are you seeing out in Arizona?
Right. Yeah, we're doing phone interviews still and really trying to gauge these people before we kind of bring them in and make sure that their needs are matching ours before we kind of bring them in and kind of start all that process. Typically right after that, we'll get them in the next day if they're available, because we don't want to drag it out, because we know people are, you know, they're going to take another offer if we don't move quickly. So getting that in, if it's a practical, we'll get them in that same day of the in-person interview. And make sure we have our leads do those and then kind of translate to us. And then final step, as long as I'm here, or our director's here, we kind of get them in there, meet them, and then send the process where it gets going right away.
That's great. We're gonna go deeper into practicals in a moment, but I'm gonna come to you, Marcy, on your interview process and how quickly you're moving through that.
We as well have shaved off several days in a similar way that everyone else has mentioned. We we can't offer directly to the staff because it has to come through our HR department. But if we like a candidate, we tell them at the end of the interview, look for a call or an email from our HR person. We really want you to join the team. We've always done a hands-on and a verbal interview at the same time with our practitioners. And I mean, we'll get into that, but kind of a similar thing, just moving it as quickly as possible because you have to jump on people or they've been snagged.
Yeah, it's definitely the buyer's market right now, for sure, on all of these positions, not just therapists, but on every position through our entire organization. People are going quickly. Justin, I'm going to come back to you on the practical piece. I would love to know how you're handling the practical portion of it. More specifically, who's actually doing the practical, and if there are very specific guidelines that you're looking for within that practical process, and how you assess someone's skill set.
Yeah, so we have our lead massage therapists, our estheticians do the practicals. We have our 5 diamond standards that we really look for in each candidate. We're a pretty large facility. We have about 140 people on staff. So we try really filling those spots quickly. So technique is super important. We obviously look for technique. We're looking for if they can mold into our protocols. We partner with Trilogy Spa Holdings, so they have wonderful protocols that they give to us. So obviously they don't know all those to a T, but as long as we know we can mold them into that, and if we feel that they have the touch and the expertise that we're looking for, that's how we kind of know if we're going to move forward with them.
And is there any kind of documentation that you're doing? Is there a written form that your lead fills out, or?
There is, yeah. So we have a whole checklist, and if we kind of grade it. Anything 80 and above is most likely to go, because those usually are things we can train on moving forward. But just the basics, really making sure that they got the touch, they've got the experience, where they know the 5 diamond industry, the luxury clientele that we have. That's really what we look for on those.
That's great. Charlotte, how are you guys approaching it down at Fisher Island?
Yeah, pretty similar, although either myself or the manager, one of the managers, does the test out at different times. I've had leads that do it. I think, in this climate, knowing how busy management schedules are, it is quite a commitment to carve out the time. But I also see it as that's the time I do get with them and get to know them, and it's equally as important as the interview in the office. Same thing, we do have an evaluation form. We're looking at everything from, the bedside manner, the intake into the room, their professionalism, their mannerism, their pre-intake experience with us, looking at draping as well, all the touches that we're going to look for in a luxury experience. And it's not because it's a deal breaker if they don't have them all, but that's what we're assessing, and then we're looking at the whole package to see, what we would need to supplement with training.
Is that something you would share?
Sure.
Yeah, so maybe Crystal, we drop that on the iSpa website for people to take a look at. Just, of course, people will change it for what they're doing, but maybe a good starting reference point for people. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Marcy, how are you approaching the practical? Are you even doing practicals? Some places are doing practicals. Okay.
I saw that on the list from the survey of absolutely doing practicals. It's usually also our leads, esthetician or therapist. I am a massage therapist, so if we need to get an interview in right away, I will do both of those parts of the interview. We have a checklist, but we have not written it down. So I do like that idea of actually writing it and grading it. But we are on a 50-minute and an 80-minute rotation. So we're picking back up on the hour or hour and a half. So for us, timing is a really big component of what we're testing. We want to make sure that massage feels complete and much longer than a 50-minute. I want it to feel like a 60 or a 75 if possible, which can happen. So obviously timing, technique, draping, variance in pressure that they're listening to, your request in the intake, avoiding anything you talked about, all of those great basic. And then my esthetician is so meticulous at making sure they're doing everything that makes an amazing resort experience. So it's a lot of fun to hear the feedback from the team.
That's awesome. Before I go to you, Megan, on what you're doing at Gadabout, is anybody paying therapists for practicals? I see, Megan, you shook your head yes. Was that a yes or a no?
Well, paying who?
Are
The
you
person
paying
that's
The
doing,
person who's performing the practical, not the person receiving the practical, but the person who's performing the candidate. Do you pay them for? No. Okay. Well, so now that you're unmuted, what do you do with your practical process, Megan?
so we've previously only had practicals for massage because our massage education was so short, and not having done any massage interviews recently, we have now begun thinking and onboarding experienced staff, which has not been something that's ever been part of our culture. And so we have a practical for our hair department. So they test into which class they would be joining or test through all of them. And then through our education, we have test outs where they have to do a practical service on one of the educators before they pass that class. So I think for us, it's about how we've integrated that to not just be a recruitment piece, but also be a confidence builder for our service providers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Marcy, I want to come back to you on, I know we're talking about expediting and moving along the interview process. How do you do that and not make the process feel very transactional, just like quick to get them through and make them feel that it's thoughtful and that they're valued in the process?
Definitely making sure not booking interviews too close together so that there's not any clock watching before they come, making sure they know exactly how to find us, that they're feeling welcome, come in, ask for me or whomever is providing the interview. And we do them one-on-one. So we, bring them into a closed space, invite them in, start that interview process, and then we'll give them a full tour of the spa. I mean, it's abbreviated, but we take them through we have 3 levels. We're in a dome. It's kind of a fun experience in and of itself. And we just try to really be warm and welcoming and not rush.
That's great. That's great. Charlotte, how are you guys making it humanized in the expedited process?
Yeah, you have to take a ferry to get to Fisher Island. So we definitely make sure that everybody understands the logistics to get to us in the directions. And then kind of embracing that was a bit of an experience to get here, welcoming them. For most people, it's their first time coming to Fisher Island, giving them a little bit of a history, making them feel like a guest, that they're visiting us, to kind of break the ice rather than them feeling like they're here to be on stage with us, giving them a tour. And I usually try to have one of the team members in the department that they're interviewing for give them the tour.
Oh, nice.
So that they can ask questions of that individual and, kind of relate a little bit more. Again, kind of calms everybody before they come in for the official interview.
I think that's so good to have a fellow associate walk them through, because they can ask those questions they may be afraid to ask you. That's
Absolutely.
really a good piece of that. Megan, how are you guys handling the human side of this whole process?
Well, I think for us, we have the opportunity to have a resource center. So we have a corporate office or a separate facility that we do all of our education out of that's separate from the salons. And it was easy for us as a leadership team to do interviews out of a corporate office, if you will. And it felt too transactional. It felt too much like we were doing group interviews. You're not even getting the experience of being in the spa or in the salon. And so we've moved all of our interviews back into the salon locations so that to Marcy and to Charlotte's point, they feel the experience of being a guest. They can have a tour of our salons. They can see the energy. They can feel what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And do they even feel like they would be a match for that type of energy? And then I love the idea of a tour by somebody in their department. We're going to be implementing that as soon as we get off this call. But we do that tour. And then I think for our interview process, it's so much less about the skills and it's more about the team and the energy and how you're going to connect and how we're going to be partners a long time from now. And we get to know one another personally rather than making the interview so much about these are our standards, this is how we do a service, the technical side. It's definitely more face-to-face team energy connection.
That's great. Charlotte, I'm going to come back to you. So you sit at the top position in your spa, and are you in the room with these potential candidates, or are you signing off? How are you as the director functioning in that process?
Yeah, no, and unless I'm off and, we need to move quickly, I do meet every candidate.
Great, very great. Justin, how are you guys approaching the process of making this interview process human for people and enjoyable for people?
Yeah, very similar. Really making sure that they know how to get to our property. We're pretty large, so we want to give them clear directions so they're not wandering around lost. And the tour is actually something that I really like to do. When I meet every candidate, I always give them a tour. That way they kind of get to know me. It's a little bit more of a relaxed environment than sitting in an office, because we're walking around and I'm showing them the great aspects of our spa and our people. And you get to see our attachés and our front desk and our retail team, and everyone just kind of greeting them and introducing them to give them that warm feeling before they're even hired. They know that we're friendly and we're outgoing. And interview questions, I love to ask questions like, what do they like to do outside of work? How do they handle their work-life balance? To really not make it so transactional on like just what their duties are, and so.
That's I always ask people in the interview process what is important to them in their work environment. And I always ask them what qualities they think make a good leader. And then I ask them, do you have those qualities? Most say yes, but the more you can make them talk about themselves and what they value, the more you learn about who they are. Besides the sort of like BBI questions we learned how to do back in the day, it's a little bit more free form and free flowing in terms of the conversation. There's a great question from Kenneth from Marriott, which ties into our next question, which was very good for us. I'll come to you first, Marcy. How are you onboarding a new person? And then what are you doing, to Kenneth's question, what are you doing in those first 30, 60, 90 days to really wow them and make them be happy that they joined your organization?
Yeah, so the process is obviously a little bit different for our support team versus our provider team. Our support team, they're shadowing. We have like a full checklist that they're going through, they're learning. We're always introducing them to any team member that comes up. I'm personally checking in with them a lot, especially right at the beginning, giving any feedback really positive. For providers, we've created quite an extensive orientation, if you will, where we sit and we go through all these questions that we've continued to have rise to the surface when we thought we had covered it that first day. So my lead does take a good chunk of time to go through this checklist. And then we've also created a survival guide that's down in our back of house area for them to reference again, a property tour, and always lots and lots of introductions. And I think we could do better on the wowing. I'm looking forward to some ideas.
Kenneth, drop some ideas into the chat. We'll spread them
please.
around the people watching. I wanted to ask you, because someone's going to drop a question in right soon, I'm sure, about what you just said. For your lead therapist, are they paid a lead rate, or are they paid a separate rate when they step out of the room to be a lead, do a practical? How is that set up for you all there, Marcy?
Currently, my lead doubles as my supervisor. So if my lead is training, paid provider rate. If my lead is orienting, doing any of the office, it's paid at that rate. So I do have him clocking in and out under different pay codes.
Okay. Charlotte, thank you for that, Marcy. Charlotte, how are you guys handling that onboarding process and wowing people in the first 3 months of employment?
Yeah, so I think, in these last couple of years when we've been short-staffed and management supervisors are spread very thin, and we've been onboarding people, we've had to really employ the support of all of our team to assist. So we do a checklist agenda for new hires, and that kind of travels with the new hire. So they could be trained by various people throughout their onboarding period. So we kind of have them take ownership a little bit of, today you're scheduled with this person and you're going to shadow this person. And at the end of the day, you will have them initial what they covered with you. So that the next day it's kind of passing the baton to the next person. We've done this kind of out of survival need, having to do it. But again, it's kind of been a nice way for them to be integrated into the team, get exposure to different employees, and it be really a team effort to welcome somebody on board. So we found that that works quite well, and it keeps the process moving at a steady pace. And then the manager will check in after about a week and say, okay, let's see that agenda checklist and see where we're at and review it and see if there's any questions or any follow-up after. I agree with, Marcy, I think we can do a better job on some of the wows. We have done things, they're just not necessarily as consistent. So I think that's something we could probably work into our training agenda checklist. Obviously, in a spa, we have the option to throw a service to a new hire, and that's a big wow, especially if it's their first spa. That's a way to hook them right away. But we also, really partner with our vendors who are incredible and bring in goodies, and give them samples or treats or gratis after training. And again, that's a wow for them. So I think it's more about looking for opportunities to make this more standard in our onboarding process.
Yeah, I think the wow thing is we have to sort of, I know we talked about this at conference last year with our first keynote speaker about how you wow a new person who joins your organization. But I think, now that we're sort of getting out of survival mode, I think those more expressive types of pieces can be investigated by all of us to make that onboarding really special for people when they come on board. Justin, what's happening with you in terms of your onboarding process?
Yeah, so for our therapists, they are training with the leads for 2 days. So we kind of do a really big orientation with them, make sure they have binders filled with all the information. And then after that, we do something called the buddy system that we recently launched. So we're kind of testing out how that goes. But you get paired up with, if you're an esthetician, you're going to get paired up with another esthetician. And that person is your go-to to really help answer any questions that you need. So I love that. We've had some great feedback on that. People, they get connected and they get to kind of feel like they're more part of the team in the break room. So it's just a really good experience overall. So we're just kind of seeing how that goes. And yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Megan.
Some of these ideas are really great. And one of the things to tie into what Charlotte's doing is we do have kind of a handbook, if you will, that each department has, and it has to be, you have to be able to learn it, you have to be able to do it, and then be able to teach it yourself. So you have to have all 3 of those signed off on before you become a fully executed whatever department you're in. But one of the things in the first 30 days that I think is really fun is we play bingo. And so they get a bingo sheet both for the culture side and one for the service side. So the service side is what they're learning, and they have to kind of fill it in. They get signatures from people as they're asking questions, learning about product. Maybe they're having a service experience and they get all that signed off. And then they do one for culture. So learning people's names, learning where everything is, being able to give a tour themselves, knowing who the leaders are in the building. And once those 2 bingos are filled in, they get the goodie bag or the welcome basket that has prizes and just fun stuff from the salon or the hair department or the spa, so that they can then get their hands and start feeling products and things like that. So I think bingo's fun.
Bingo sounds fun. And guys, Kenneth did reply. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can. He said they just recently hired 3 retail managers, and they sent a welcome basket with a note welcoming each of them to the team and saying how much they were valued in joining the company. So it doesn't have to be a whole world that you give people. And sometimes it's those a handwritten note goes a long way sometimes. And free products. People always love free products. Justin, I wanted to come back to you. I know it's always a hot topic in spas, particularly around the therapist. How much flexibility are you giving people in terms of their schedules?
Yeah, so scheduling, as we all know, is highly important now more than ever, because we have to be flexible if we want to keep quality candidates. When interviewing, we go in the onboarding process, we are really transparent on our needs to make sure that it's going to match up with their needs, kind of right out of the bat. So we know that we're all on the same page. What's great is we do a shift bid 2 times a year, and we're open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we have different shifts throughout the day. So if morning, afternoon works better for you, we really give the new people and prior ones access to really pick what shifts work best for them. Usually the PM shifts are a little more open because people like to get in and get it over with. But But yeah, that's kind of how we handle it. I definitely think really listening to them and working as hard as we can to ship bids. A lot of people, our therapists work together and trade. They know each other very personally too, as well as we do, to make sure that their schedules are working for their kids and for their families and lives. And we really want to help them not have burnout.
On your shift bids, is it the order of the bid based upon seniority, or how are you setting the order of who goes first and picking their shifts?
So we do a point system. Seniority does go into play, but also modalities, which is very important. We kind of switched that up over the last couple of years because you could have someone here who only does one service, but has been here, 30 years. So we really kind of mixed that in. So it actually enticed our therapists to really start learning and doing all the trainings that we offered to get followed up on all the services. And so then they can move up in line to pick their shifts when it comes down to it.
Well, that's great. I know one thing we started doing here, and I'll come to you in a moment, Charlotte. And it seems really minor, but this is super important because we know how it works sometimes. We approve time off requests in 24 hours.
Yeah.
There's no go find your replacement. There's no let me see what the books look like. If someone's asking for time off, they get it. And it prevents it from calling off from shifts, which is what we don't want to have happen. But we're very responsive to people's personal needs when they articulate them to us. Charlotte, you're next.
Yeah, I think that's great, Patrick. I think with service providers, we've become a lot more flexible. If they want to come in later, if they want to work a shorter shift, we're leaning more towards their needs than, oh, I need to be conservative and wait and see if that's going to book in. Because the reality is we're finding they are willing to work if they're going to be busy. So it comes back to us in other ways when the next time I'm saying, can you come in earlier? Can you stay later? Or can you pick up? So it seems to be reciprocated on both ends. On the support positions, we're finding more and more people want to work 4 days a week and have full-time benefits. And we're really shifting our approach to that. We have to hire more people to cover the shifts because I don't think that request is going to go away at all. And I think if we stay rigid on it, we're going to be the ones that lose the good candidates.
Charlotte, it's the new normal. I mean, we're having to rethink our entire structure because people are going to want to work 3-4 days a week, and they're going to want the full benefits, the whole pie. And we're just going to have to suck it up and do it because that's just the reality of what the world is asking for right now. Charlotte, I'll come to you in a moment, Megan. Charlotte, Nicole Sauer, I hope I'm saying your name right, Nicole. If I'm not, I'm sorry. Wants to know, to our previous question, how long does your orientation process take before they're able to be booked on the schedule, your therapists?
So I'm fortunate that most of my therapists are very seasoned. So most of the people that are joining the team have been working in the industry for quite some time. So the onboarding process with therapists, honestly, is actually pretty quickly. We're getting into just going through treatment specific protocols. Of course, going back to what I was saying before, in that trade test, we're going to know, well, have they worked at a luxury property? Do they have Forbes standards, leading hotel standards? Or are we starting from scratch? So that would dictate the schedule differently. But in general, we've been pretty fortunate that most of the people that come to us have that experience already.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Charlotte. I hope that answered your question, Nicole. I would imagine we're all probably expediting the training process. Maybe Gadabout's probably a little bit longer, but for the spas, we're like, can you massage somebody? Good, go. Megan, how are you guys approaching scheduling at your different locations?
I think the key word that we all are thinking about and sharing and executing is flexibility. And to your point, 24-hour vacation requests, time off requests, that's huge for us. Our service providers, at least in our hair department, once they go on the floor, they've been with us about a year. Our education process in hair is really robust. So we know that they're going to be with us, right? They're going to develop this career and they're going to build their clientele, and we want to be as flexible as we possibly can. So we do honor time off requests. We work with them on a schedule that will help them be as busy as possible. And then once they get into this level of productivity, that we can adjust schedules. You can not, instead of working 2 late nights, you could work 1 late night, so on and so forth. But it's all really customized and based on their personal level of growth as well as their business and what they need in order to be, prosperous.
Yeah, and I think something that we have to bear in mind as we're having this conversation is that flexibility probably also means a higher head count across the board. And so as we're all talking about this, the other side of the conversation has to be with your director of finance, with your general manager, with your ownership group, that in order to accommodate the business demands, you may have a higher head count than what is budgeted to give people the flexibility of going on vacation or getting sick or going to a child's play recital or something like that. So I think we have to just bear that in mind also.
Well, and I think about our service providers, the average service provider in our company, whether they've been with us for 1 year or 40 years, is 28 hours. So they're working on average 28 hours and making a great living. But in order to have a business that's, for us, we're open 5 days a week in most of our salons and 6 days a week in the other. In order to facilitate and sustain, we have to hire almost double the amount of people.
Yeah, you have to. Marcy, how are you guys approaching flexibility at your property?
Well, I wish we were 5 or 6 days. We're every day of the year being a resort. I think a lot of people are in the same place. Just like everyone else is saying, open dialogue. We have a lot of communication with the team. If something has shifted in their life, they come and let us know, and we work to make a scheduled arrangement for them. We have an amazing team that helps each other out all the time to get coverage. And like Charlotte mentioned, they ask to come in late one day, but they will come in early or stay longer for you another day. So it's actually turning into this beautiful, really reciprocal partnership. And, less of like dictating schedules, more as working together to meet our guests' needs.
Yeah, I think those days of dictation to people are kind of over for right now. It's going to be a conversation, much more. Charlotte, I want to come to you on a different question in terms of how you're gathering employee feedback, current employees and departing employees on the happiness of the work environment.
Yeah, we did employee surveys this past year. We did it at the end of our high season and kind of gave them the opportunity to evaluate how they think management's doing, what we could improve upon, how they feel we're doing in delivering our product to our members, their experiences, what, in their opinion, everything down to what do you think about the equipment we use, the props and fitness, so on and so forth. And then, asking them what would they change? What do they think we need? What kind of services would they be interested in bringing in? What kind of equipment? What are they hearing our members and guests asking for? So it was quite comprehensive, but it was positioned in, kind of like an internal report card, but an opportunity to share anything and everything that's on your mind. And I think that's something that we will do annually. Of course, I think the conversations individually need to happen because some people aren't as comfortable writing things down or putting their name to it, which we did allow them to submit these anonymously. But some will share individually one-on-one as well. So we do try and encourage those conversations too.
That's great. Justin, how are you guys getting that feedback from your team members?
Yeah, very similarly. We send out an anonymous survey quarterly to all staff at the spa. We typically ask questions like, how can your leaders better support you? Or I feel comfortable working in my environment. I feel comfortable reaching out to other departments. We're always moving so fast here. So we definitely like to know if they feel knowledgeable on all the events and the promotions that are going on, not just at the spa, but on the property, and how they're feeling appreciated. So we kind of mix up the questions every quarter, but we do send those out and get a lot of feedback. We then meet together as a leadership team and kind of go over which ones that, we really need to tackle first, and kind of go over stuff like that. But it's definitely a really good tool.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think the surveys are great. Charlotte, coming back to you from our good friend, Anna. Bonjour, Anna, ça va? Was the survey that you sent out mandatory, and what was the participation rate?
It wasn't mandatory. It was about 60% participation rate, and I guess just indicative of surveys in general, we have to chase and follow up to get those back. So, maybe next time we would be a little more creative and an incentive tied to it, to encourage stronger participation.
Yes. Megan, how are you getting, I know you have multiple locations, so how are you getting feedback?
We have attempted to do a survey and our participation rate was terrible. So we don't do that anymore. But we have salon leaders in each location that have quarterly one-on-one. So we do a quarterly 45-minute check-in, seeing how they're doing, what they need, what they're looking for. And then our owners, Frank and Jana, are in the salons at least every other week doing just connections and seeing the team, being present, being in the back room, asking for feedback. And then we do team events. So, you know, we just had our very first, probably our first annual team pep rally. And so that was kind of our version of a state of the company, or kind of that get together and talk about the future. And usually after that, or after we have different events, we get a lot of feedback and a lot of opinions that are just verbal and shared. And so our leadership team is empowered to help us act upon them.
That's great. I love a pep rally.
Oh my gosh.
I love a
With
pep
complete with a yearbook. It was awesome.
It's from my cheerleading days, Megan. I can't
Yeah.
help myself. I just want to do a backflip or something.
Oh my gosh, so fun.
Marcy, how are you guys getting feedback from your team?
It's fairly similar. We do have quarterly team meetings broken apart into each area of the spa, and we have a lot of dialogue going on in there. If I'm looking for something to change, I'll prep them before the meeting with, you know, come prepared with your ideas on what new treatment we should create, or, you know, my favorite thing is to collaborate. So I love to pull the team into the decisions. We've done resort-wide surveys. We haven't done one for a little bit. I'm loving some of these ideas and questions. So thank you everyone for sharing. And it's a lot, there's just a lot of open dialogue. And with my lead being down on the floor working a bit, he hears a lot in the moment, because people tend to forget what they were going to tell you. So it's great to have somebody working in both, you know, up in the management and then down on the floor. So we do get a lot of in the moment feedback or texts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a quick go around very quickly. Each one of you, tell me quickly what your favorite interview question is. We've sat in a lot of interviews, so I know you have your favorite. What is it? Just one. Justin.
Yeah, my favorite interview question is all around guest experience. So I like to ask them, what do they feel is the most important thing for a guest experience? Just because that really helps me and my team gather more insight on how they may fit into our culture and how they're going to take care of our guests, because that's number one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Charlotte.
I like to ask how their family would describe them, because I think you get very honest answers and perceptions, and you really get to know them. And it's not, you know, what are their strengths and weaknesses that they think in their opinion. It's not one of those stock answers. It makes them pause and go, let me think about that. And what comes out is usually pretty telling about their personality. So you get a little bit of a true snapshot.
I love that. Megan.
Charlotte, I love that. And Patrick, your question earlier might now be my favorite, was what qualities do you feel make a great blank? And do you have those qualities? I love that. My favorite previous to this was tell me about the most recent amazing experience you've had, tying into what Justin was saying about learning about what they think excellent guest service is.
That's awesome. And Marcy.
I had actually written it down before, but it's similar to what you had said. I like to know what is important to you in a workplace environment. And then it opens that door to maybe why they left their former job. It lets us start having a great dialogue about what our culture is, if we're a good fit for each other, and it can really open a great window to discussion.
I think what you just said, Marcy, is a great way to wrap it up, that the interview process is now about a dialogue. It's not a one-way conversation. And I think as we think about how we move through our interview process, how we move through the work-life balance with people, it's really all about a dialogue and understanding who people are and where they are in the process. I want to say thank you to the four of you. I want to say a huge thank you to Oakworks for sponsoring today's session. If you look at your screen, you will see who the lucky winner is, and we'll make sure you get your non-Beyonce, but your Beyonce face cradle. All right, Valerie Lee, you do it. Today's session is going to be available for iSpa members on the website on our Access on Demand at experienceispa.com. And thank you guys again for joining us and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everyone.